Welcome to another Superior Health Wednesday. We're joined by Jim LaJoy, Executive Director with Superior Health Foundation. How are we doing this week?
I'm doing great, doing great.
So obviously the mission is to connect people, health-centered nonprofits with grant funding, helping bring ideas related to health and health services to the UP. And for today's discussion, we want to talk about what makes a good grant. So if we could just kind of talk us through when people are coming up with ideas or coming to you with grants, what are some of the first things that you look for in the conversations or ideas?
Absolutely. And, I think it's really a good topic to kind of explore, because there is such a thing as a really good grant, and there's such a thing as a very bad grant. And what we look for really are several things, and not in any particular order, but certainly we like to see, sustainability with the grant. When you're putting your numbers together and you provide those numbers about what you're looking for in grant funding, we're happy to do that. But we need to see a plan that when the grant funding expires, what is the plan to sustain it? Because the worst thing that can happen is we fund a grant and it's really, really successful. And then all of a sudden we hear a year or two later that money that we provided, that service is no longer being offered because they had no plan in place. So we look very, very carefully at sustainability. What kind of other funding partners? Do they have fundraising activities involved? How did they approach that? So that's a key one. Another one that we look for with good grants are collaborations. We love to see in our grant recipients them come to us with a plan where, we're looking for funding, but we already have some other funding sources in place. We already have relationships with a couple of other different funding sources. And they come to us and say, we've already secured so much in grant funding. Can Superior Health Foundation be that bridge to get us from A to B so we can kind of complete that? So we love that. We love collaborations. The other thing that we look for is the target area. What region are you serving? And with us, there are certain grants that are countywide, but being a regional health foundation and serving the entire Upper Peninsula, we love to see grants that serve more than one county, that serve multiple counties, and they have plans in place for that. That's really, really key, because there really is no point to provide funding for a grant and have it just done in one county, and then somebody in another county coming back to us for money that's basically doing the same thing. So if they have those pieces in place, it just makes a lot of sense for us to fund something that is reaching out to a large group of people. And then one of the other things that's really, really important to us are accurate budgets. And we've talked about this one in the past, that when we look for our grant committee, that's one of the first things that we look for are the budget. Does it line up with what your needs are? Is it representative of it? When you have things that are in your budget, do you have copies of the receipts, what it's going to cost for a particular piece of equipment or service? When budgets line up with the proposal, we really like that. That's good for us, because then we see that they've done their homework and that everything is in order. What frustrates us is that sometimes we'll get a budget that is rounded off, or they do some guesswork on what something would cost and they're kind of guessing at it, and then it doesn't align with the narrative that's in their proposal. So what often concerns us in situations like that is we'll have to table a grant, and they'll have to come back to us in a month or two. And we don't like to do that. When we have the pieces in place to start, it just makes our job a whole lot easier, and it puts us in a position to fund right from the get-go.
Sure. And I think that's something that you all do really well, is when people are putting together these proposals for grants, anytime they have questions, not to guess at it. If there's something that they're unsure of, that you help connect them with that information, so that you don't have to go back and do that. And you've done enough of these with enough different groups that you can help them understand, here's exactly what we need. So you try to make that as easy as possible to understand, especially from a budget aspect or really anything else. Here's the most direct path to move your idea forward.
Yeah. You know, in some of our previous segments, they must be working and people are watching, Ben, because we've actually have touched on this in other segments. And I'm fielding more and more calls now from those folks, from those nonprofits, because I think there was kind of a fear factor going into it, like, well, do I really want to call? And I might not like the answer. But now the call is a lot more confidence, like, I need to reach out and figure out, is this something that you would potentially fund, and what are the pieces that we need? So that line of communication is vitally important. We want to be able to be in a spot to provide that necessary information that they need to put together a good proposal. And by the same token, we don't want them spinning their wheels either. If that particular grant doesn't line up with our mission vision and it's not a match for us, I don't want anyone spending hours upon hours working on something that's not going to get funded. So we've taken more of those phone calls. I actually took, I think, one or two last week about potential projects, and being able to steer them in the right direction, provide those answers to their questions, is a win-win for everybody. It's a win for them, and it's a win for us, because we know then that they're on the same page and that the proposal that we're going to be getting from them is going to be pretty solid.
Yeah. And that's great that you're getting more calls, you're getting more interested people that have these ideas. And we want to instill that confidence, let them know how to do this. Or is there anything that you've seen that's been kind of a common theme as far as applying for grants or questions that we can help dissolve that mystery and get people on the right path?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think, you know, oftentimes people look at our mission and they look at how we're providing, you know, services to enhance, you know, health education and those types of things. And sometimes there's a project that kind of falls, you know, into that area where it's, does it really fit? Is it on the fringe? And when we're able to look at that and answer those questions, oftentimes what will happen is the original proposal and the idea that they had may not fit within our scope. But being able to talk to them about it, and once they explain what they're looking for funding, I oftentimes will shift the discussion a little bit, and I'll say, well, you know, what we're talking about here probably isn't going to work for funding. However, after talking to you, I can see a piece of this that may work. You know, enhanced education, training. There might be an equipment piece that they need that they didn't even really ask for initially, but after that discussion and learning about what the program they're trying to enhance, I can kind of steer them in a direction where they end up asking for something totally different than what the original intent was. And that's good. I mean, that's how you foster relationships with individuals and companies and these different nonprofits. And, you know, we've had a couple of examples of things like that have happened just within the last month or so. We had one organization that came to us, and basically we talked about a project, and the organization said, you know what, we've already raised a certain amount of money, and what would really help us is if you guys could kind of complete it, because then we'd be done with the project. So there were already 3 different funding sources that were in place. And when our committee saw that, and they saw the work that went into it, relationships that they built with other funders, they looked at this proposal and they said, this is perfect. This is exactly the spot that we want to be able to be in. Plus the project was an equipment purchase that will benefit those with disabilities. So we were very, very thankful to support that project and others just like that.
And that's such a great example of the importance of why you do what you do, because you have worked with so many other groups that, and one of the things you often talk about is how listening is a key part of what you do. Is you can hear what someone's saying, understand what they're trying to do, and you can help pivot that conversation in a more productive direction. And
Yeah.
I think for things like even when people have an idea and being able to expand it beyond whatever their county or their community is to something that can be further reaching, that's just a huge advantage of, you know, why your work matters and why your organization works.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And I think you just hit upon a point, Ben, that often is overlooked a little bit in fundraising. You know, in our world, we spend a lot of time asking. We do. We ask donors for support. We ask, you know, businesses for sponsorship, and we do that because that's part of what we do. But what's overlooked is the listening part of what we do. You know, I take great pride in our staff, we talk about this a lot, that it isn't all about us, it's about them. We need to listen. We need to understand where they're coming from, really listen, and kind of carve out those pieces from those discussions, and then figure out how can we bridge the gap and how can we play a funding role to help them get to where they need to get. And you know, I think far too often in this climate, we're all so busy, we're running in multiple directions that the art of listening kind of gets overlooked. I have to pull myself back at times too and say, we need to listen. We need to understand where they're coming from. And when you listen and you're able to get back to them and give them some solid answers to the questions, people appreciate that. They really do. People want to be heard, and they want someone to listen to them. And by doing that, it helps everyone. It helps, you know, those that we fund, and it certainly helps us.
And that was you said exactly what I was thinking. People want to be heard. They want their thoughts, their ideas to be valued. And you just provide that direction and that resource to them. So let's kind of we talked about all the good things. We talked about some of the stuff to avoid, but we want to make sure that we're kind of eliminating those bad grants, those maybe not quite their ideas. What other advice do you have to kind of weed out some of that?
Well, there's a couple of things. Number one, in the grant process, one of the things that I always talk about is you need 6 eyes. And what do I mean by that? Well, you usually have somebody from the grant department that is putting it together and then is sending it on to us. Okay, that's 2 eyes. What I always tell potential grantees is you need another 2 sets of eyes to look at it before you send. That's 6 eyes, because then you're avoiding some costly mistakes, like where you didn't do something, you didn't fill in the right information. An incomplete application is something that we frown upon. Even though we have built-in safeguards right in it that we need this, we need that, there are some that just ignore it and don't do it. And you know, that certainly hurts. The other thing that I think is very, very important is for our grants, we always look for letters of recommendation, support. And we've probably mentioned this in the past, but canned letters of support do not work for us. In other words, you know, you have a letter of support and you need 3 letters, and you just send it to 3 people and you say, here's the letter, just sign it. And it's the exact same letter. Our committee just frowns on that. It's personally one of my pet peeves. I don't like it. And we'll go back to folks and say, it's got to be better than this. You know, you have to have letters of support, you know, from outside of your organization that are really true letters of support, that they're their own words to do it. And we've made great inroads in that area. When we first started, we had a lot of canned letters of support. Now, I would say that happens maybe 5-10% of the time now. People have gotten message that we need to, it's got to be authentic and it's got to be from the heart, and just don't copy and paste for that. And then the other thing that we touched upon earlier is, you know, having the evaluation, having the summary, all of that is incredibly important. Making sure that you follow the guidelines that we have, and our guidelines are not very difficult. You know, we have talked about this in the past too. You know, it used to be grants 20 years ago would take you, you know, 20 hours to fill out a grant. Our grant process is relatively easy, and we do that for a reason. We know people are busy, but we have certain things that we need to get in there, and just make sure that you're submitting the right information, it's timely, and make sure, as we talked about earlier, you have an accurate budget. worst mistake a grantee can do is submit a request for $20,500, and then we get a budget that says $17,500, and it doesn't match up. And that still happens. But again, that's where that the other two sets of eyes and having six eyes look at it really comes into play. Because if you have, that fail safe to kind of make sure that everything, all the ducks are in a row, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed before you sent it, then we can ensure a pretty successful grant.
You want to make sure if you have this idea, you don't want anything to hold that up. And one of the easiest things to do, I mean, other than having a conversation, spend some time on the Superior Health Foundation website. All those things, all the requirements are laid out there. It's a checklist that you can just go down the line and make sure you have everything right there. So you're applying for the right kind of grant, that you have all the pieces needed for it, and that it's getting submitted in the right way. So that's probably one of the easiest things you can do to get started. Look around there and like, where does my idea fit in?
Absolutely. And one other quick thing too, that's important is that, we accept grants, as we've talked about, for equipment grants, pilot project grants monthly, but we also have spring and fall grants. So think about this from a perspective of a potential grantee. You submit a fall grant that for whatever reason didn't have all the pieces that go into it. Guess what? You're going to have to wait now until the spring to resubmit that, another 6 months down the road. We don't want that to happen, because we know you probably need that funding right now, and it's probably something really good. But by the same token, we have rules that we have to abide by. We want to be fair to everyone, make no exceptions. But if all the pieces are not there, we have to politely say, no, you'll need to come back to us. And that puts them at a disadvantage because they've lost some valuable time to impact people.
And that's the last thing we want. We want people on the most direct path to helping their neighbors, because that's all you do. Like, if these things don't happen, then our communities are missing out on resources, on programs, on equipment that could be a huge help. So I think we've touched. Is there anything else we haven't talked about in related to grants, as far as the good, the bad, and anything else we might have missed?
No, I don't think so. I would encourage, our audience, to go to our website at superiorhealthfoundation.org. We're constantly putting our grant set work up there. We rotate them in and out, gives you an idea of what we're doing. And again, if people have questions about a particular grant or an idea that they have, call our office. You can talk to me, you can talk to Laura Jarvie, who oversees our grants management. We'll be happy to answer your questions, kind of steer you in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, we're all about providing funding to help people and improve the health care of people all across the UP. So we're here. All you have to do is access us, and we're happy to help.
Good. And I hope these conversations continue to peel back those layers, make people feel more comfortable, make this whole process more approachable, so that we get those ideas flowing and get donations coming back in as well.
Absolutely.
Perfect. I think that's all for today, and we'll pick it up again during the next Superior Health Wednesday.
Okay, thanks so much, Ben.
Thank you.